Welcome to episode 24 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on January 3rd, 2020. Today I'd like to tell you about the start of the Maakin for the MRI Knit Along. We are in the thick of it, folks, but there's still plenty of time to join. I'll talk about the stash clean out and a few more odds and ends. Let's get started. I'd like to start by thanking the 7 of you who hopped over to iTunes to leave a starred review for the podcast. And I'd especially like to thank Ali12987, K Bleich, Peaceful22, and JRMRSB for going one step further and leaving a comment with your review. I know that does take time out of your day, but it also helps make the podcast more visible for people who are searching for knitting podcasts. And quickly to Peaceful22, I plan to podcast for the long haul. So when I do finally get my master knitter status, I hope to still keep going. I really love podcasting and getting to know my listeners and the opportunities for learning that have come to be because of the podcast. So don't worry, I have no plans to go anywhere. I'd also like to thank my new patrons, Linda, Jill, Lynn, and Kelly. Thank you so much for going over to patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow to financially support the show. Your contributions have raised the monthly total to the point where both my monthly file hosting fees and the monthly music fee are covered, and that's just fantastic. I feel like that's a true milestone to have 2 of my 3 monthly bills covered. Thank you again to all of my patrons. Once I have those monthly bills all covered, I am going to start updating my equipment. You may have noticed in the last episode I had some sound issues, and that was actually the result of a faulty microphone holder, of all things. It just would not stay put. And it would be very helpful to have an alternative recording device for interviewing people at festivals and other places out and about. So rest assured that your financial support goes straight to improving the podcast for all your fellow listeners. I had a giveaway going for a few months. It was for a set of stitch markers in the podcast colors that would be gifted to one listener who signed up for my mailing list. That was awarded the other day to listener Joanne from Texas. She has already been informed, and her stitch markers went out in the mail today before I started recording. If you still haven't gotten them, Joanne, hold tight. There was a bit of a delay getting them out in the mail because I'd run out of mailers, and I had to wait for Amazon to send me some more. Going forward, almost all of my giveaways will happen either to my patrons over on patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow or to members of my mailing list, which you can join by going to IThoughtIKnewHow.familypodcast.com and scrolling to the bottom of the page to fill in the form. My Patreon levels start at $1 per month, and the mailing list is free to join, so please sign up in one or both areas, depending on what makes the best sense to you. It just saves me a lot of time and effort to run my giveaways in those locations rather than through other social media accounts, so that's why I'm making the switch. I'm happy to report that I finished the 14-day Yarn Stash Destash strong. Those of you who follow me on Instagram would have seen all the steps I posted for this. I know some of you were too busy over those last 2 weeks of the year to take part. That makes absolute, complete, and total sense. That's totally fine. The posts are still there on my feed. My username there is @IThoughtIKnewHow. And I know some of you said you were going to come back and start in the new year. So this is your reminder to go back to my feed and look at those posts and work your way through the 14 tasks. I was expecting to get rid of a lot of yarn in the process, but that is actually not what happened. Some of you are probably not surprised by that at all. I did get rid of a lot of duplicate knitting needles. Metal ones went to U&U Fiber Arts over in Windsor, Connecticut. Rachel, the store owner, uses them to make jewelry. The rest went to my nephew, who learned to knit last year and is still going strong. I also gave him my copy of 60 Quick Knits because it really is such a great all-purpose book for a new knitter. I just didn't need it myself. My books, printed patterns, and knitting needles were where most of the shoveling out happened. I had so many books that I hadn't ever opened. They'd been given to me, or they were ones that I picked up just because they were on sale. But when I took the time to actually look through them, I realized that a lot of the information was redundant between the books, or they just didn't have patterns I would really ever knit. So those were easier to part with than I expected. Yarn and unfinished objects we dealt with over 4 days towards the end of the 2 weeks. I ended up frogging, I think 3 unfinished objects and returning the yarn to stash. In every case, I had lost the pattern and I had no idea how to find it again. So the yarn just went back to stash. The remaining unfinished objects fit perfectly into the number of knitting bags I have. So I took that as a sign that I could stop. So I stored each of them in a bag, and all of the projects in their bags are now in a Rubbermaid container that is missing its lid, so I can't really use it for anything. They're just waiting there to be pulled out and worked on, probably between projects. I'm hoping to cast on and finish a project, grab a UFO, finish that one. We'll see what actually happens in reality, though. After dealing with the UFOs, that's when I realized that enough chaos had been dealt with between getting everything organized up to that point and the extra space that I had from clearing out my books and patterns, that I actually felt a lot better about my stash space. I no longer felt like things were sort of perched precariously on top of each other or dangling off of shelves. So as I spent the remaining 3 days going through my actual yarn stash, I realized I really did have a pretty good grasp on my yarn. There's very little in my stash that doesn't have a planned project associated with it that I still want to knit. I did pull out maybe 6 or so balls of utilitarian workhorse wool and put that into the donation bin, but for the most part, I just repacked my yarn stash so it was a bit neater and in proper storage containers and called it good. After going through the 2 weeks of tasks, I felt mentally and creatively refreshed. It feels really good to have put eyes on everything and be reminded again of what I actually have. There were quite a few people who went through the process with me, even though it is a busy time of year, and they all expressed positive feelings about the experience too. So I encourage you again to go to my Instagram account and take yourself through the 14 tasks. I have a project on my needles that I'd like to tell you about. You may remember me mentioning Ashcroft Makers yarn. They're one of the prize sponsors for the Maakin for the MRI knit along. I've recently been working on the Passerine hat by Erica Heuser, I believe is how you say her name, Heusser, using Ashcroft Makers naturally dyed yarn in Ancient Olive and Pollen, which are a green shade and a buttery yellow color. The Passerine hat starts with a twisted rib, and then when you get to the body of the hat, there's a silhouette of a row of songbirds perched on branches that travel around the hat. So it's not Fair Isle, but it is stranded color work, which, my new obsession. The Ashcroft Makers base is a fingering weight worsted spun 4-ply, 100% blue-faced Leicester wool, and is also a superwash. What this means is that I'm getting a really nice, crisp stitch definition from the yarn, and it's going to be a nice, lightweight, but still warm hat for me to wear when it comes off the needles. The winter here has so far, aside from maybe 2 kind of crazy storms, been pretty gentle. There's been a lot of snow, but it's so strange. We get the snow and then a day or 2 later it warms up. And so my yard has been covered with snow several times and then it's all melted away. We're in a melted away stage right now. The other day we were meant to get rain. It ended up being freezing rain. And then a thunderstorm started and we had hail and we ended up with about an inch of icy, slushy nastiness. But all of that is gone again now. The pond out back is still frozen. But we have had some really warm days, so I'm actually surprised that it is frozen still. Anyway, I'm looking forward to having this lighter hat that I can wear because especially like in February and March when things start to warm up again, still chilly, but we end up with crazy wind. We do have trees on 2 sides of our house, but they're on the wrong sides. So we end up just getting blasted by winds for several months as spring arrives. And then I have to usually go out along the tree line and pick up all the debris that has been blown into our yard and trapped at the start of the forest. Oh, it's fun. It's fun. Anyway, it's so windy that I end up having to wear a hat longer than I'd like to. Has it come through in the last few episodes that I'm not a fan of winter? I spent too much time in the tropics. My blood has thinned. Anyway, I really am, get back, focus, Anne. I really am looking forward to having a nice lightweight hat for when it's getting warmer, but the wind's still crazy, and I think this is going to be the hat. I really love that it's superwash because I plan to wear the heck out of this thing, and I'm glad to have something I can just throw in the laundry every 9 or 10 wears and not have to go through the hand washing process. This is my first time working with Ashcroft Makers, and I am a fan. I think it would be excellent for baby gifts, and I think it would be great for lightweight sweaters as we head into spring and summer. The owner, Finn, also sells project bags and machine and handmade items, so pop over to Ashcroft Makers and have a look. Let's take a moment for a song. It feels like it's time for a song, right? I am bringing you 2 songs by the same artist this time. His name is Tom Goldstein, and I'm bringing you 2 songs of his in the same episode because as I was listening my way through my options this week, I did not think they were the same artist. I would have pegged them for the same genre, but not the same artist, and that felt trippy to me when I realized it was the same guy. So here's the first song. It's called Song for You. Enjoy.
To hug the sky, you just need to fly high. It will be cold for a while, but at the end of time I will be on your side. Whoa, please don't go too far. Whoa, don't go too far. If you want to travel miles, pack your dreams and thrive outside. I will be here for advice while you get into the wild. Whoa, don't go too far. Whoa, please don't go too far. To leave this world and just leave my heart alone in the dark. I remember we used to smile, but please don't go too far.
I think that back in the spring sometime, I told you about a personal project of mine where I wanted to listen my way forward through the vast catalog of knitting podcasts. I'm toward the end of 2014 right now, but saying that, I have cut way down on the number of podcasts I've been listening to. So originally, my goal was to listen to all of the knitting podcasts I could find, but I realized that there were a few that just did not appeal to me, and that was okay. But at some point, I got a new phone, and my podcasting app didn't remember what subscriptions I had on my old phone. So when it came time to resubscribe to all of my knitting podcasts, I decided instead to just resubscribe to a handful of them. So for now, as I move forward, when I hear a podcaster mention a different podcast in one of their episodes, I'll search for it and add that new podcast to my download list, as long as they still exist. Remember, I mentioned some of these old podcasts just don't exist anymore. So right now, I'm kind of rotating through episodes of Knitting Pipeline, Shinybees, and KnitPicks. When I first mentioned that I was doing this project, someone mentioned to me that the KnitPicks podcast had a dramatic change along the way, and I have reached that point. It's somewhere around 240. When Kelly Petkin, one of the owners of KnitPicks, when she retired, the podcast fell to an employee and it shifted in tone and content. So now, every now and then, they have episodes where they deal with a concept around knitting. So there was one about using knitting as healing. There was another one about teaching knitting in schools. They do still have designer interviews and such, but it is like a totally different podcast. Luckily, I do enjoy this new format too. So I am continuing to listen my way through. And I think what I'm going to do is when I get caught up with all the knitting podcasts that I am subscribed to or that are getting mentioned along the way, then I will do a search and pull up maybe 4 or 5 other podcasts that I haven't picked up yet and listen to those episodes from the back forward, because I really am enjoying sort of the trip through history that it's giving me. But at the same time, by trying to listen to all of them at the same time and go through all of them at the same time, it was almost feeling like I was being trapped in history. Like, it's been August 2009 for like 7 days now. I've got to move on. So I figured, if I put my focus into 4 or 5 podcasts, pick up a few more as I go through, and then once I'm caught up with all of those, I can go back and repeat the process with another 4 or 5. And I can keep having that experience of revisiting knitting history and what was popular. It's been a really interesting experience because not only am I moving through all these techniques that had their heyday, like entrelac, I'm looking at you. There's also been all these interviews with authors who were shy and nervous about and sort of eager about having their book published and not sure how it was going to be received, but they were making the circuits and doing the promotion, and since then the books have become classics. And it's really interesting to have that reminder that these sort of people that we think of as being the big names now, they all had their moment of being new in the spotlight. And I just find that very interesting to go back and to listen to them as they are just getting their initial exposure. Another podcast that appears now and then in the list of episodes as I'm listening through them is the KnitSonik podcast by Felicity Ford. It is fascinating, and I get so thrilled when one of her episodes comes up. They are rich, immersive listening experiences, and I encourage you to seek them out. I'll put links to all of these podcasts that I've mentioned in the show notes, but if I had to recommend one of the 4 for someone to just pick up and go through that historical walk, I'd say go for KnitSonik. It doesn't seem like it's being produced anymore, so there's only a limited number of episodes and you'll be able to listen through. I can totally understand why she's not making them anymore. It had to have been a lot of work to put each episode together, but they are still out there and they are definitely worth a listen. I've had a couple of odd coincidences also as I go through the listening of these podcasts. For instance, one of the books that I pulled out of my stash the other day to donate was a book called Domino Knitting, and it came to me with my mother's knitting books. And I listened to several podcasters talking about this new book, about this new concept, Domino Knitting, and just listened to sort of like the beginning of the exposure of this concept, this technique to the wider realm of knitters because of this book. And here I had just pulled it from my shelf and said, this isn't really for me. I'm going to send it on to someone else. And then, so that was one coincidence. Another was that Paula, the host of the Knitting Pipeline podcast, has a shawl pattern that she designed called Piper's Journey. And it gets mentioned a lot on her podcast. And I finally had resolved to look it up because I'd heard her mention it so many times, but I hadn't had a chance to yet. And I was sitting in U&U Fiber Arts in Windsor last week for Knit Club, and a customer came in to have another look at a shawl on display that she thought was just so beautiful. And it ended up being a Piper's Journey. And when I heard someone say, oh yeah, that's a Piper's Journey, I was like, oh, Paula designed that. Oh, goodness. So I mentioned when I first talked about this project of mine that one of the reasons why I was doing it was because I felt like I'd been so removed from the knitting scene while I was living abroad for so long. And now I really do feel like I'm starting to get caught up with things. I've listened to the birth of retreats and fiber festivals that are now well established and highly attended. As I said, I'm listening to interviews with authors who were brand new on the scene, who are now the big names that people travel to go take a class with. It really has been a fascinating trip through history. I'm very happy to tell you that my nieces and nephews were really happy with their Christmas gifts. I got them each a year's supply of unscented, sensitive skin formula drops detergent. All of them were happy. 2 of them were thrilled. Because the formula is concentrated, the year's supply fit into a manageable compact box, no plastic containers, and because it's roughly half the price per load as one of the leading brands, I was able to get each of them their year's supply without blowing out my Christmas budget. We use it in our house. I have it on an auto ship schedule, so it comes when we're getting low and I don't have to think about it. There have been a few times when we weren't quite ready for a new shipment, and it only took a few clicks at the website to delay the shipment by a month or so. It's a new year. Everyone's looking for ways to simplify. Take this one thing off your plate and give Drops a try. Use my link and you'll get a discount on your first subscription order, and Drops will send a little money my way at no extra cost to you. It's one of the ways to help fund the podcast, but I would not talk about Drops if I did not use them and love them myself. Save yourself some money and mental energy and make the switch to a plastic-free, effective detergent that comes right to your door. My link is tinyurl.com/drops. That's tinyurl.com/DROPPS. Thank you for helping to support the podcast. I started getting this episode ready on January 1st, which was the first day of the Maakin for the MRI Knit Along, hosted by myself and Jana Knits of the Purl Together YouTube channel. We started it in the morning with a live stream on Jana's YouTube channel, and I've posted a link to that recording in the Facebook group and in a post on the website, and I'll stick it in the show notes as well. Or you can find it just in the Purl Together group on Ravelry or the Purl Together YouTube channel. We cast on and answered some questions about the patterns and the process and went over the prizes and how we'll be awarding them. And I thought I would go over the prizes quickly on the podcast too, for those of you who don't have time to sit down and watch the live stream. We've also added another prize since we recorded, so I'll tell you about that as well. So let me grab my printout here. So we have 3 different types of prizes, and I'm just going to go through them. So the first type of prize is the cast on and progress prizes. So for the cast on prize, you have to post a picture of your cast on to the Purl Together Ravelry group in the Maakin for the MRI chat thread. And that needs to be done, actually, it needed to be done before this is going to drop. It's the deadline for that is the first Saturday after the launch, so January 4th. So if you're just learning about this, you're not going to be able to get started in time for the cast on prize. But the prize for the cast on prize is a code that was donated from the MRI Makers for one more pattern. And that is going to go to 6 of the people who posted their cast on pictures. So if you're just hearing about this now, you're too late for that prize. But every week we will have a progress prize. And to qualify to win the progress prize, you have to post a picture of your progress for that week on the Purl Together Ravelry group in the progress thread. And the deadlines for that are January 11th, January 18th, and January 25th. So the 11th, 18th, and 25th at midnight Eastern time. And then the winner will be drawn and announced the following day, so the Sunday. And each week we will award 2 sets of stitch markers to one winner. One set will be in the I Thought I Knew How colors, and the other will be in the Purl Together colors. So of those 4 prizes that I just mentioned, well, really it's 9 because we have 6 of the download codes for the cast on. You can only win one of those. So if you won a cast on prize, you can't win a progress prize too. Or if you won the progress prize on week 1, you can't win it on week 3. So that's sort of one type of prize we have going. The next set of prizes are the prizes that are coming to us from various sponsors. So we have 5 download codes from a designer called Merrily by Design. Some of you have heard me talk about her before. She designed the Sea Pinks hat. I always get compliments on that hat. She's given us 5 download codes. One is for, and all these deadlines are January 31st by midnight Eastern time, and we will announce the winners on February 1st. So the 5 prizes that can win a download code is for group participation, just for being on the group and being active, not necessarily for the person who talks the most. Support staff is what we called another. So that one is someone who's been very encouraging to other people on the discussion thread. We have a Happy Helper Award that will go to someone who has lent a hand to a fellow knitter on the discussion thread. We have one called The Future is Bright, which will be for someone who is new to Fair Isle and has done a fantastic job. And then we'll have a random draw just from someone who participated in the discussion thread. The new prize that we came up with, we saw someone post a picture of their cast on with their cat, and we said, you know what, we need a pet prize. So we decided to have another prize called Pet Poser, where we will pick a pet photo with a finished or in progress project in the picture as well. And the winner of that will get a set of the I Thought I Knew How and Purl Together stitch markers. So that's the new prize that we didn't talk about on the live stream the other day. And then Jana will have an award that she just gets to pick herself for whatever criterion she decides. And she will award a yarn bowl from Prairie Bag Works. I will also have an award that I can just pick to reward to someone, just whoever I want to give it to for whatever reason. And that will be a $35 gift certificate with free shipping from Prairie Bag Works. There's another bag. And then we have 4 gift certificates from Morehouse Farm. We've decided to give those for the following awards. One will be a random draw. One will be for amazing original color choices. So if you are knitting from Stash, or if you just pulled up one of the websites of Shetland Yarn and started shopping for your own colors, you're going to qualify for that prize. There's another one called Make It Your Own, which will go to someone who modified one of the patterns in some way. And then we have one called Standing Ovation, where we're just really impressed with how well your project turned out. And so those 4 different prizes are all a $25 gift certificate from Morehouse Farm. And then finally, Ashcroft Makers is going to donate a hat kit with enough yarn to knit a Harriet's hat. And that will be awarded to someone who has knit and posted photos of more than one project in the course of the knit along. So we're calling that one Addicted to the Cause. Of those prizes that I just went through, so the download codes from Merrily by Design, the Pet Poser, the gifts from Prairie Bag Works, the gift certificates from Morehouse Farm, and the gift from Ashcroft Makers, you can only win one of those. And most of them, unless I said it was a random draw, Jana and I are going to pick the winners from people who have participated and posted photos in the chat threads. So be aware of that. And then we have the grand prize. Now, the grand prize has additional stipulations. What is the grand prize? It is a huge amount of stuff. We totaled it up and it was something like $160. There's a project bag. There's a notions bag. There is a rainbow ring counter from Knitter's Pride. There are 6 balls of yarn. There's 2 pom-poms. There is some pouches of tea. My memory is failing me. There's a few other things. It's a lot. It's a big grand prize. In order to qualify for the grand prize, you need to finish the project you're working on by January 31st at midnight Eastern time and post a finished object picture in the finished object thread on the Purl Together Ravelry group. In addition to that, there is a widget that you can find on my website, I thought I knew how.familypodcast.com. There is a post there about the grand prize. If you open that up, there will be a widget there that has 3 things that you have to do in order to qualify for the grand prize. The first thing is you have to subscribe to I Thought I Knew How. Now, if you have already subscribed to this podcast, you still need to click through the link in the widget in order for it to register that you have subscribed. So you still have to accomplish that step in the widget to get counted. The other thing you have to do is subscribe to Purl Together on YouTube. Again, if you already follow Jana there, you just need to click the link so that the widget thinks that you have gone through and subscribed. The third thing that you have to do is post a finished object picture in the Ravelry thread. And we will be checking that all 3 of these things have been done. So if you just click through the links and you haven't done those 3 things, you will be disqualified for the grand prize. But once you have done those 3 things, 8 more options will open. And for each of the 8 options that you decide to do, you will get an extra entry in the grand prize drawing. So there are things like joining my mailing list, joining Jana's mailing list, joining my Facebook group, joining Jana's Facebook group. Okay, so there's a whole list of things there. And when you click through and do what you are meant to do, then you get an extra entry. And what this widget does is it creates a spreadsheet for us with your name and the things that you've done, and it creates a separate entry for each of those things that you've done. And then when it's time, we can just tell the widget, pick a winner, and it picks a winner, and we can just quickly confirm, okay, yes, they subscribed here, they subscribed there, they posted the picture, they qualify, they're the winner. Okay, and if we find that you haven't done one of those things, then we can ask it to pick another winner. So all of the progress prizes and cast-on prizes will be announced in the Ravelry threads and in social media. The rest of the winners, so the prizes that Jana and I pick and the grand prize, will be announced on February 1st during another live stream event. So, and of course, we will contact you if you're not able to be on. So don't worry about that. You don't have to be present in order to claim one of your prizes. But just so you know, that's when that's going to happen. Whew. We had a lot of prizes to get through. I want to thank our sponsors, our prize sponsors one more time. Merrily by Design, Morehouse Farm, Prairie Bag Works, and Ashcroft Makers. Thank you for being so generous with your prizes and adding an extra element of fun to our knit along. And of course, we're doing this knit along to raise money for the Shetland MRI scanner appeal. All the patterns at MRImakers.com. The sales of those patterns go directly to the Shetland MRI scanner appeal to help raise funds to purchase an MRI scanner for the people of Shetland. So thank you for making that gift to the people of Shetland and for knitting along with us, maybe learning some new techniques, encouraging each other, and just building some nice community. Before we get into our next song, I want to let you know that right before I started recording, I went over to Amazon Music and made a playlist of all the songs that I have played for you on episodes of the podcast that actually exist on Amazon Music. I believe you need to be an Amazon Prime member to listen to the playlist, and you may need to be a Music Unlimited subscriber. So it may not work for you, and I'm not sure about that last thing about having to be a Music Unlimited subscriber, but I'm still trying to figure this out. But for those of you for whom it does work, the list is there. You can find the link to it in the show notes for this episode, and I also posted it in the Facebook group. So here is the second song by Tom Goldstein. This one is called In Love With You, and it's got some interesting accent instruments in it, like what sounds like a child's piano. Have fun listening for them. I can't place all of them myself, but maybe you can.
Everything is falling when you're not around. I keep on wondering when my time will come, 'cause I'm desperately in love with you, desperately in love, desperately in love with you, I'm desperately in love. I keep on stalling, time after time. I hope I'm not losing the one that I love. Desperately in love with you, desperately in love. I'm desperately in love with you, desperately in love.
A few more things before I go. This is the last episode before Vogue Knitting Live in New York City. I will be there January 17th and 18th. On the 18th, I will be at the Morehouse Farm booth from 1 to 2 p.m. There will be gorgeous merino yarn to pet and purchase, paper copies of the Harriet's collection patterns to benefit the Shetland MRI scanner appeal, and me. So come by and say hi. I do love meeting listeners. Some of you may know that I submitted my 2-color Harriet's cowl that I knit from Morehouse Merino 2-ply to the Readers Take the Runway event. Normally, they only let people walk the runway in a project that they knit from a Vogue Knitting pattern, but I took a chance and submitted the Harriet's cowl and followed with an email telling them about the project. And I did get an email a few days later thanking me for submitting the entry and saying they would let me know. So I didn't get ignored outright. They said that people who submitted entries wouldn't hear back until sometime after January 2nd. So the fact that they emailed at all has me very hopeful, but I'm recording this episode before I know one way or the other. So I'll keep you updated on social media about whether they accepted it or not. I'm actually not super excited about the idea of walking the runway. Especially after gorging on Christmas cookies over Christmas. But I think it would be really good exposure for the MRI Makers patterns, and I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone if it will help. I will also be at the Morehouse Farm booth at Stitches United. That's on March 28th. No fashion show there, though. I will be running 3 rounds of trivia. To play, we are asking for a $5 donation to the Shetland MRI scanner appeal. That will get you an answer sheet for that round. Each round will have 15 questions, and the winners will be informed after the event by email. The prizes are a Morehouse Farm gift certificate, and the first 50 participants in each round on the day will receive a stitch marker made by me. The questions will be different in each round in case people want to come back and play again. We are working them out now. They are multiple choice, and some are harder than others, but you can always guess, and it's all in good fun. The rounds will start at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3 p.m. So if you'll be there on the 28th, please come by and take part. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's actually a Facebook event created for each of the sessions. You can find them on the Facebook group. We are trying to get a sense of how many people to expect. So if you think you're going to attend, please go to the Facebook group, find the event for the session you'd like to attend, and let us know that you're going. That's all for today. I'll talk to you again after Vogue Knitting Live and let you know how that went. It's my first time attending, so I'm eager to see how it goes. Thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you would like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow to make a monthly pledge, or consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors on the website IThoughtIKnewHow.familypodcasts.com, where you can also find the show notes for each episode, or you can help out by leaving a 5-star review and kind comments wherever you listen to this podcast, and also tell your friends. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on Ravelry and Facebook are both called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Remember that the discussion for the January Knit Along, Maakin for the MRI, is going on the Purl Together Ravelry board, so be sure to hop over there and join. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.